Dagger's Hope. The Alliance, Book 3. Written by S. E. Smith. Narrated by David Brenin. Chapter 1. Dagger clung to the top of the cage holding him, his back pressed upward against the cold metal. He had braced his feet in the narrow slats and held on to the thick bars with his left hand as he watched the secondary doors slowly open. In his right hand, he held a long chain filled with razor-sharp blades designed to slice through flesh and bone. He ignored the blood running down his arm, watching disconnectedly as it dripped to the floor of the cage far below him. Holding his body perfectly still, he waited for the massive creature under him to turn. A sense of cold calculation kept his mind sharp, even as his body threatened to weaken from exhaustion. "Fight! Fight! Fight! Fight!" the crowd chanted, wanting him to drop down. Dagger tuned out the crowd. He had seen what was about to be released into the cage with him and the other male long before they did. He knew if he was to survive, he had to use every skill he possessed. As it was, 3 out of the 4 men that had been in the cage with him were already dead. The 4th man wouldn't last long from the way he drunkenly staggered away from the door. The man was coated with blood, both from his own wounds and from the blood of the male he had just killed. The beast would attack the moment it caught the scent of him, which was why Dagger had turned and climbed up the woven half-dome bars that formed the cage. He had killed 2 of the males that littered the ring. The crowds surrounding the cage had screamed for him to finish the other 2 men that were locked in a battle of life or death. But he had ignored their demands. He knew that he needed to conserve his strength for what was to come. Instead, he fell back against the side of the cage and drew deep, calming breaths as his eyes roamed the arena searching for the one responsible for him being there. He knew the male was somewhere in the crowd watching him. Dagger could feel the male's gloating gaze on him, just as he did every time he fought. His eyes scanned over the packed arena. For a moment, he paused on the Drethelin, sitting in the box seat high above the crowds. While Jolin Talja owned and operated the fight ring called The Hole now, he was second on Dagger's list for termination. No, he was searching for the one who thought he owned him. The one that lent him to the owners of the illegal underground groups that enjoyed the profit of watching men and women like Dagger fight for survival. Dagger was an enigma. He had survived longer than any of the other fighters so far, and was the most profitable one to date for both his owner and those who bet on him to win. His eyes froze on the 3rd row up, as a familiar set of beady black eyes stared intently back at him. For a moment, everything around Dagger narrowed to the one figure leisurely sitting back in the reserved box in the stands. Their eyes locked in a silent battle of will, one in triumph, the other in promise. The pale white complexion of the male stood out among the other colorful spectators in the stands. He didn't try to hide his face in an effort to remain anonymous. He knew that Dagger would search him out, and he wanted to be found. A deep hatred burned bitterly inside Dagger, threatening to boil over until he thought he would explode. He stared back at Cordus Kelman. The billionaire mercenary's bald head shone brightly under the lights of the arena. He was on the most wanted list in numerous star systems. The bastard was smart enough to stay on the outskirts of the Alliance's boundaries, not quite out of it, but not quite in it either. Kelman stayed in the space that was considered primitive and dangerous to any who entered. It was a lawless area that no star system wanted to deal with because they knew that as long as the area existed, then those that inhabited it would stay out of their own regions. That had been true until Kelman attacked the planet where Hunter, Dagger, and several other Trivator forces were trying to regain control. The attack had turned out to be a trap. Kelman had been the mastermind behind the staged battle that led to his capture. He didn't know what happened to
Sample complete. Ready to continue?